And we want, as we have no registered public speakers today, I'll just move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Section 24 report. And if I could invite the Interim Director Peter Carpenter and the external auditor, Jackson and Morpheus from Grant Thornton to present the report.
Thanks very much, Chair, evening members. So the Section 24 report in front of you today is fairly short in nature and sets out the facts along with the recommendations we've raised, as well as management's responses to those recommendations. Page 6 of this evening's agenda pack sets out how the recommendations are made, so under the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014, and the rationale for the recommendation, which is in respect of issues relating to financial systems, which I'll come on to in a moment, which has impacted on key statutory returns and related financial governance. A key element of this is the non-delivery of the 2021 financial statements and subsequent to that the 21-22 financial statements. In respect of the recommendation, what will happen next is this document and the recommendation will be presented at full council. At that meeting, full council will decide whether the recommendation is to be accepted and what, if any, action will be taken in response to the recommendations. The legislation sets out that meeting takes place within 30 days of the issue of the recommendations, and as you'll see from the front page, page 5, this document is issued on the 31st of October. So that after this evening's meeting, this will go through to full council for discussion. Page 7 of the agenda pack sets out the background to this issue, so members will be well aware that historically, as external auditors, we've commented on difficulties in respect of receiving information to support financial statements that have been prepared by the council in previous years. One of the cited reasons was the old ledger system, and a decision was taken to replace that with a ERP system, an enterprise resource planning system, introduced by TEP1 a number of years ago. That was implemented on the 8th of February 2021, and following our interim audit procedures in Q1 of the calendar year this year, so Q1 2022, we identified some issues with that system in respect of cash receipting in particular, which meant that transactions were being posted as officers would not have expected and as solicitors we would not expect either. That's meant a number of knock-on impacts, including the financial statements, as I've said, that cannot be produced for 2021 or 21-22 for members' benefit, and if you remember, for the current financial year audit that we should be doing, which is the 21-22 audit, the end of November is the statutory timetable for producing either the audit opinion on those statements or a notice as to why the opinion has yet been issued. So the council has fallen fairly significantly behind in terms of those statutory returns and other related returns such as the revenue and capital outturn returns as well, which rely on those financial statements. Our conclusion is that the implementation of that ledger system was not effective, given that some 20 months on there were still issues in respect of cash receipting. And over the page, on page 8, we set out written recommendation, the statutory recommendation in respect of this issue, urging the council to rectify the system issues. I'm sure Mr. Carpenter will come in on this once I've finished speaking in a moment, as well as then producing 2021 draft accounts for audit, and then shortly following that the 21-22 financial statements for audit as well. Just as a bit of context in respect of Grant Thornton's view, clearly my view is that this warrants a written recommendation under the Act. To issue this recommendation, prior to doing so, we go through an internal panel of experts within Grant Thornton, that's comprised of various partners who've worked in the sector for a number of years. That A, ensures that the judgment that I have made on this matter and the seriousness of it is correct and robust and supported by the firm, and also ensures consistency. So for some clarity, I'm aware that Grant Thornton have issued another statutory recommendation very similar to this nature at another authority in 2021 for similar issues. Their non-delivery of accounts started prior to the year that we're discussing here, 2021. I'm aware of, other than Bromsgrove District Council, where we've made similar recommendations, as well as that council where we've made a statutory recommendation. There are 2 other Grant Thornton audits where 2021 financial statements have not fully been completed and published. Both of those relate to some specific accounting issues in the 1920 audits, which means those audits have yet to be concluded and the balances cannot be confirmed for opening of 2021. One of those is an internal drainage board, the other is a local authority, and we've received single entity accounts, but the group position is the issue that we have, or that the auditor has, and hence the group accounts have not been produced. So that gives some context from a Grant Thornton perspective, that we are treating this matter consistently amongst our audited bodies where we have similar issues. I wasn't going to say too much more on this. We will note on page 9 there's a short summary. I think it is pleasing to note that progress is being made. Clearly we consider that this is a significant matter, a very serious matter, hence the report. We started discussing this with colleagues in finance when we became aware of this, so Q1 22 we have seen and heard of progress. I think the challenge now is that until we see a set of draft 2021 accounts and can confirm that all those legal issues are truly resolved, we need to remain professionally sceptical in this matter, and hence say that's the key challenge I suppose at the moment, and I'm sure Mr. Carter will comment on that in a minute. So I won't say any more. I'll open up to any comments or questions or invite Mr. Carter to talk about it.
Thank you, Chair. And in response to the external auditors, disappointed, but understand why the auditors have issued such a recommendation. In terms of the route to this, obviously we had 2 out-of-date systems in 2018, the financial system and cash receiving system, went through a tender process, implemented then a winner, which was Tech 1, in the COVID period, and that went live 8th of February 21. Since that time, we lost all the corporate finance team, so no matter what system we've put in at that time, it would have been surprising if we'd produced any accounts until we've staffed up. We are now fully staffed up as of August. We've gone through 2 recruitment processes, one in fall of last year, which wasn't particularly successful. We got 3 from that, 1 left in April. The processes we ran in April and May were much more successful this year, and as I said, they're now fully staffed up. The system has had inherent problems with cash receipting, which has been reported to this committee a couple of times at least, and we've had some quite large discussions on it. We are in a position now, as of last weekend, where the final fixes have gone in. And I think the complaint has come from this committee quite rightly, and I've only been to it now 4 times, but we keep saying the same thing, we're not seeing progress on the fixes. Those fixes are now in place as of the weekend, and we are in a position where we need to produce draft accounts for Grant Thornton by the end of this month, which is 3 weeks' time. And we've had a group of people working on that, the bits that can be worked on since for a number of months now. Just as a point of reference, we want to do group accounts, we have Rubicon. We have closed Rubicon for 2021 because they comply with the Companies Act, and we've also closed for 21-22. They're just about to be audited again for 21-22. There have been significant learning points from Rubicon. It's much easier to look at something that's about a 20th the size of what we've got to deal with here to actually get and learn points of how we deliver. We've got those, and we are using that in terms of taking things forward in terms of the delivery of the accounts at the end of this month. So, as 151 officer, my view is I reluctantly accept statutory recommendation, I have to say that. However, our rectification process is we have now, after 4 months, a fix for cash receipting issues, and we will move forward over the next 3 weeks to finalise the accounts. So draft accounts will then be approved to take forward for the auditors for delivery. Following that, we'll give the finance team a week off, I think, and then they can start 21-22. Now 21-22 will be a lot quicker, because obviously everyone will have been through the process. The only interesting issue is obviously I will need to wait for the accounts to be audited to have finalisation, and so those will be very, very draft accounts until we've gone through the 2021 audit process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do members have any questions?
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, the fact that 24, section 24 notice, as you say, is very disappointing. It's not a surprise because basically the accounts are way overdue. So it's not a surprise. However, it is disappointing. And I'm sure officers and sort of councillors and portfolio holders, members and things like that, we're all disappointed because we don't want that. We need to make sure that we do better. See, when we knew the old system was way out of date, really old. Yes, it worked, but it didn't work very well, and basically we had to get a new system. The fact that the new system hasn't basically performed in the way that we were advised, is there any compensation that the company can pay Redditch Borough Council, I think Redditch Borough Council for basically an underperforming system?
Through you, Chair. In terms of the system and how it works on the finance side, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Sorry. In terms of the Tech One system, it does work properly, apart from one module which we jointly designed, council officers and Tech One, in terms of cash receipting. We used a design which, instead of having three entities, had one back office entity and did inter-entity transactions to move things out. It transpired that that was not the right solution to do, and the solution we put in now has three back office entities for cash receipting to rectify that. I'll just bring Michelle in because Michelle has done all the work on Rubicon and has a great insight into where the transactions have been going, just to give you an idea of what we found and how we rectify it. But the rest of the system works. In fact, it's probably better than the competitor. There were two systems that got to final tender. The other system is a well-used system. I think the Tech One system is better because it's one click closer to the invoices from the transaction, which is better for users.
So am I right, through you, Chair? Am I right then that my question, the answer will be no, that we will not be getting compensation from Tech One or a system that didn't work when we expected it to work?
Correct. It didn't work in the way we both envisioned. I'll put it that way.
What was that? Were Tech One on site? You said we were not together. No, I can't think one. Sorry. Were Tech One on site to help us through? Or so you did this together?
Through you, Chair. So the rectification process I've been heavily involved in the last 4 months, and the teams have. The expertise we've been drawing on is in Australia and New Zealand, and so actually it works relatively well. We have either an earlier morning meeting or a late afternoon meeting. We either go off or they go off, and by the time the others come back the next day, there will be a solution there. So actually, in terms of the resource, it works relatively well. I'll just bring to your attention though, in terms of cash receipting, it's the most difficult part of local government finance systems. There is a shortage across everywhere. If you look at SAP and Oracle, they generally use Civica, Paris and other things. They don't have cash receipting bits on theirs as well. And so Aggresso did build their own one because I was part of the team. I wasn't involved in it, but did it for Triborough. And so they've got a back office solution now for cash receipting and have had for a while. But it's, you would usually use Paris or simply for something else. However, our cash receiving solution was miles out of date as well, and we would have to done a massive upgrade. And so we took the decision to move forward with both at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. Vice Chair.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm kind of trying to understand how we've got to this situation. So we've purchased an ERP for quite a lot of money. Can you just clarify how much we paid for this system?
It's about 7, that's between 2 authorities, isn't it?
Yeah, I need to get you the exact figures because it's over about a 4-year period.
So you can't let me know how much the system's actually cost for the councils?
I can get you that figure. It's not one figure I've got at the moment.
That's fine, thank you.
So when we purchased it, was it supposed to be fully functioning? Or was this cash receipt?
Sorry, so when we purchased it, was it purchased as fully functioning? Did you foresee this problem of cash receipting?
Through you, Chair. So the solution was fully functioning for all parts. We are the first implementer of cash receipting. So we joined the design of cash receipting with Tech One.
So, I mean, with hindsight, which is great, isn't it? Was it a good decision to be the guinea pigs effectively? So I don't think any other local authority had used this system. It was a brand new system, is that right?
You, Chair. There's other councils using Tech One, but there's no others using the cash receipting module as well. Correct.
So when we started to see that there was this problem with cash receipting, did that mean any sort of compromise for council in terms of like data being lost, or what? Can you explain to me the issues that really created?
I'll let Michelle answer this because she's had to unpick this for Ruben.
Thanks for you, Chair. As Pete's previously stated, because there is one back office rather than 3 back office solution, at the point that the cash is received, it effectively recognises it as being cash from one entity, and therefore posts various transactions between entities under the inter-entity transaction code. We also result in a number of entries ending up in suspense. And so there's a number of processes that need to go to unpick that with regard to those entries to ensure that the relevant cash for each local authority and Rubicon is correct at that point in time. So there are bank reconciliations that back up the cash position, and that forms part of the overall closure of accounts.
Okay, thanks. So I'm guessing that this has also created a lot of man hours when you had a staffing problem. And while I was staffing, I just want to understand why we were in such a bad staffing situation, which is led to Section 24. Why are we down to such a low level of staffing in the finance department?
I've not got a full answer to that, although we offer exit interviews for staff. Sorry. I've not got a complete answer to that because we do offer exit interviews for all staff. However, the staff don't take those up. All the staff have jobs in other local authorities. In fact, one of them is implementing Tech One for I think it's the fire authority. And so they've either gone to other places and just moved on. I've never seen personally such an acute issue as I've seen in Worcestershire in general with finance staff. So I'm used to working in London and the East, and when I came here and looked at the numbers, in terms of staff, I came here and there were 4 or 5 full-timers there. That's really unusual, but there's big gaps in most of the Worcestershire authorities. And Jackson remarked in this committee in April, for example, had similar issues. I mean, if you step back and look at the 2021 accounts across the country, there are still 35% of the 2021 accounts not audited because there's a lack of audit resources to do them. And so it's a national issue at the moment. So people have gone to other jobs, got headhunted and brought in other places. However, in the middle of COVID as well, it's been very hard to recruit. And we've been lucky, but we were really successful on the second tranche. But until you've got a complement of staff in, you can't actually fix the problems because you've not got anyone to fix the problems, and that's been the problem.
Thank you, Peter. I'm pleased that we do now have a properly staffed department. That's the question for now, but I'll reserve my right to ask a few more in a minute now.
Thank you, Chair. I want to focus sort of, this meeting is in two halves, I suppose. This is about the event, and the next half is sort of where we go next. So the sort of cultural issues and everything else, I think I'll leave to them. And I'd also like to propose, so we can move forward, obviously, the recommendation that we accept this Section 24 notice. This is not this isn't a surprise at all to anyone particular on this committee. It has been discussed at length and has been raised by multiple members of ASG for a very long time now. So this is something we expected. I think the biggest question I have in my mind is, when we implemented this system, what risk assessment did we actually do, and what contingency plan did we have to revert to a different system if this was wrong? Do we have those systems in parallel? I work in children's social care, so we changed the system residential recently. Because of the legislation, we run both systems in parallel for 3 months before you ditch one. You can't just switch, because if it fails, you won't meet your statutory obligations. So what risk assessment was taken, and what was the contingency plan, and why did that fail to resolve the issue?
Brilliant, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. So when the project started, there was a project board set up, and part of the overall assessment was risk assessments. So, for instance, the finance part of the system was supposed to go live in October 20. It didn't pass all the required tests at that stage, and that's why it went to the 8th of February. In terms of finance systems, you don't generally dual run. In fact, I don't know one in local government that's done that way, because you have to stop at a period of time, transfer all the balances and start from that period of time. So I've done implementations on SAP, Progresso, and now at the tail end of the Tech One. All of them, you transfer the one to the other. The biggest issue and your biggest risk is making sure your staff understand the system, because there's always going to be problems in the first 6 to 12 months with any system, but you need to ensure that your staff are properly trained to identify those risks and understand how the system works, to work with the system provider to rectify them. And that's one of the issues that we've had, is we lost all those staff, and so we've had to train a whole new cohort to deliver and get the changes done, and that's the issue we've had this year, and why it's taken up to November to deliver.
So when you did your risk assessments, what was your contingency plan for this failure?
In reading the, I don't want to go from this project notes and project boards that I wasn't here, there were a complete set of tests that were in there. Those tests were passed in terms of user acceptance testing for various parts of the system, take on balances, etc., although we had to back engineer some of the proofs for those. But in terms of system parts, there were sign-offs for all parts, all areas, and that's why we went live. The bit we couldn't mitigate against at that time was losing all the key staff within the next 5 to 6 months. I've never come across that before anyway.
I appreciate that, and I think there are discussions around whether there's a cultural issue or anything else to why you lose such a large amount of staff so quickly. But my issue sort of is, if this was all signed off and you applied tests to make sure it worked, how did it fail? Is it just the staff, that there was no staff who knew how to use the system and that's why it failed? Or did we have the wrong tests?
Thank you, Chair. So there is one part of the system where we've got an issue with, which is cash receipting. The rest of the system works fine. Okay. Expenditure, there's a lot of noise from the staff because they don't like doing purchase orders and requisitions. But if they've taken the other solution, it's exactly the same. Again, income recs, income orders and income recs, exactly the same as the other system. The only difference between the two was the testing around cash receipting. We put in a solution jointly and signed it off, a single back office with inter-entity transactions pushing it to the three entities. Once we got into heavy use of that, we found that that didn't work to the level it should do. Because what happened was the vast majority, or a significant amount of transactions, went into suspense, when in a normal processing, a small amount would go into suspense and everything would be coded properly. So the fact is that all these items went into the number of suspense accounts and they have to be taken out. That's the issue.
So would I be right in thinking, we did test it, however the test was at a lower level of data input than what actually happened, and therefore it would work in the test on a low level or amount of entries, but this just had a volume it couldn't cope with, and that's how it passed the test, but instead of failing because the test was a too low bar.
Brilliant, Chair. I think that's one of the items. It's a mix of various things, but the coding also has to be correct in cash receipts, linked to the invoice. And so a number of invoices, a number of issues there, but have now been rectified, but it's taken a long time to rectify. But I think there's just a bigger issue is not having the expertise in the staff because they left over the period. And if we had remained back overall, we would have fixed this item a lot quicker.
Just rather to you, just wanted to say something. Obviously, staffing issue has caused one of these problems, one of the biggest problems. Is this something that we can address as a council, Redditch Borough Council, is how to retain staff and what provisions are going to be put in place in the future, regular supervisions, things like that? Is there any kind of action plan?
Really, Chair. So in the Q1 finance and performance report, you've got a section there on self-turnover, which was 17% last year. I think I took a report, there was a question in council, which I did at the last council, which set out the amount we're spending on agency consultancy, which I think was around £800,000 from memory. It is a major issue for councils at the moment in employing because people are happy to work from anywhere. And it's quite hard to get staff. We have implemented a new system for recruitment through West Midlands Employers, and that has been rolled out over the last 3 or 4 months. And we're seeing some traction in terms of getting more people through that. But it's a continual issue when we're running at about 60 or 70% coverage on agency union. And we'll try and address it, but it's difficult when you can't attract people.
Thanks, Chairman. In addition to what Mr. Carpenter said, we've got a draft workforce strategy going through the executive committee next month, or end of this month, sorry. One of the biggest challenges, obviously, we might talk about financial challenges we face, is workforce. That's a public sector issue. It's a sectoral issue. Finance, Jackson sort of mentioned about the sectoral issue in auditors. I think it's great that we've now got a fully staffed team, but our turnover, as Pete said, our rate is about 16%. That, alongside the financial challenges, is acute. That's a sectoral issue, and we will have to be innovative, creative, and make sure we do all that we can to recruit and retain our staff, which we will do, and endeavour to do through the workforce strategy that's going to be executive. But it is a very, very challenging job market.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a fair bit of negativity of this committee over the last 18 months, quite rightfully, and I would almost go as far as to say that I may, within that crowd of fields, have been the most negative. I remember requesting to have staff update reports for every meeting. I've not been positive at all about how long it takes to respond to the accounts. They made a joke about it last time. However, I actually almost feel like we're turning a corner, and I can't believe I've even come to this point. So while obviously it's disappointing to get section 24, I actually would like to comment that I am almost, I feel happy to this committee that I felt in the 18 months I've sat on it, which is crazy considering we're now here, considering how we've just received section 24 notice. But as we all said, it's been coming. So my question is, at what point do you anticipate to no longer meet the criteria for a section 24?
I'll pass that to Jackson because really I have to do with the accounts.
Thanks. So through you, Chair, thanks for the question, Councillor Court. So with the section 24, there's no sort of subsequent report that says, right, you're no longer in section 24. I think for me, personally, once I can evidence and say I'm happy with evidential backup for all of those bullet points on that recommendation, that's when I no longer think that section 24 is relevant. So he's just described the 2021 accounts. So for me, there's some key points here, ensuring that we get those draft accounts, that they can be audited and that they're backed up with working papers and system information that supports those numbers. We can review that the cut-off from the old system and the rollover of those balances from that system to the new system was appropriate, and really understand the transactional adjustments and changes that Peter and Michelle have described in terms of what's happened. So from an audit point of view, and an account point of view, that would make me satisfied as opposed to sufficient action has been taken against that section 24. There's some wider elements here as well. As we just talked about staffing, and one of the key elements to a system is people knowing how to use it, number one, and then using it the way it's intended, number two, not using any shortcuts or workarounds to get around, for example, you mentioned purchase orders, requisitions, etc. So that cultural element that's been mentioned a few times, I think that is really, really key as well for a change of this system. Once that system is functioning properly, and as Mr. Carpenter said, it's pleasing to hear that it sounds as though that may be the case from last weekend. The accounts, the other statutory returns, so the revenue return, capital return, budget monitoring, and clear bank reconciliations to evidence that all of those transactions have occurred as appropriate and as such in the nature. That for me is when that section 24 no longer becomes applicable. I think what I've proposed, given the conversation we've had on this at a number of committees over the past few months, is clearly officers may well be wanting to bring some sort of update to future committee meetings against progress against this and any other recommendations on the agenda this evening. We generally table a standing agenda item of a sector update into a progress report, so it would seem appropriate for us to include any commentary on actions and improvements that we've noted since the last committee as well. So you'll get our commentary on that as well as officers, and we'll invite any questions from members today. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all know why we're in the position we're in. A, problems with the software, and B, problems with the staff. The two together make it difficult. In fact, just looking across the room, I'm not sure, there's daunting got problems with staff, because all due respect, young man, I don't remember seeing you in this committee before, so you're new to the Redditch Borough Council. Your colleagues, are they still there, or they moved on, or, you know, anyway, everybody's got problems with finance by the sound of things. So then I look at the recommendations, and maybe I'd like to see from ourselves, Nick or our friend, the finance recovery plan that we've been asked to put together. Can we see that? Is it in a draft form? Is it in a forum print, etc., etc.? I'll wait for the. I have a bit of a problem. You're talking about our new staff. Oh, my apologies. And you're talking about our new staff doing things differently, which to my mind suggests that they're working from home, and some of our officers are working from home. And if that's the case, how is that going? How is the security of the data that they're dealing with being processed? And I know I've got, I think it's three passwords on my council laptop to get through. So is that the case, or are they not dealing with sensitive data? So the recovery plan, I think that's Mr. Dick by the way, and then the secure data.
Thanks, Chair, through you. Peter and Michelle might want to comment on this as well. So the financial recovery plan has already been considered and endorsed by the executive. But as part of what Jackson says, our intentions will be to bring that and an update against all the key actions to this committee as well as to the executive, just so members can be assured we're on track. We might need to add a few things to it as a result of this section 24 and indeed the next report. So we will bring it through this committee just to make sure you're concerned and consider that we're on track. In terms of working from home, I think it's a mixed and a hybrid approach. So I think Peter and Michelle are keen, because it's a new team, for the team to be on site at least a couple of days a week, have that flexibility. But certainly in terms of data security, we've got dual factor authentication. So if people log on, so if I'm working from home or remotely, the dual factor, so all of that is then encrypted. But I don't know whether Peter and Michelle want to talk about the operating arrangements anymore.
Through you, Chair, just in terms of just going on security for a minute, we are one of the few councils in Worcestershire with cyber security because of our authentication. So we're actually in a good place in terms of data security, because a significant amount of councils, as we talked about in this last committee, haven't got cyber security now, and it's unlikely that any council will have it in another year because of it. So we're in a reasonably good place there. In terms of the finance team, we've generally been meeting at least a whole team. It was once a week, it's now once every 2 weeks, but a number of the accounts payable, the accounts receivable and the reconciliation people are all in at least 3 days a week to get things done. In terms of the way we structure the team, we've got myself, Michelle, and 2 newer staff looking forward, and everyone else looking back at the accounts, because they've got the expertise in the old system as well, which we need to do the accounts in terms of things. And so that's how we structure at the moment. Once we get over the 19 to 2021 and start doing 21 to 22, we will change those splits.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the calls officers are considerable headache. It's concerned members. It's concerned headache with those heads, or even negative until the end of the committee. I'm sure it would have sort of like called portfolio holders. Thank you for coming, Karen, which we share next time. Can you give us your views on their use and what everything you work through? This is a relatively new portfolio holder.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fry. I inherited this in May, and fortunately for myself and the council, we also managed to secure an excellent qualified law officer who has gone ahead and recruited a team. This wasn't a surprise, as we all knew. It was a hat trick. It was staff, it was COVID, it was implementation. We knew from the beginning that there was a problem, well, from that beginning, from my point of view, there was a problem with the back office and cash receipting. But we were on it. Were we ever going to get office and get it going? And the answer is yes, we are now, which is good. And a set of accounts, I'm pretty sure, will be available for audit at the end of November. I did actually have a question to ask Jackson, in view of the fact that, and this might help you as well, 35% of your provided accounts have not been audited. So when we submit ours, which I'm pretty sure we will, at the end of November, how long do you think it will be before we haven't got this hanging over us? Do we get a written acknowledgement to say, yes, we've had the accounts, thank you very much, we now look forward to your 21-22 accounts, which will be, as soon as these are delivered, in progress. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, thanks for the question. So you're absolutely right, around 35% of the sector who've produced accounts have yet to receive an audit opinion, so that's not just a grant Thornton staff, that's all provided. The grant Thornton number is 27%, so we've delivered higher than the average with the largest provider, so we do about 40% of the English authorities. So that just to put that into context. A number of those audits that are underway, there's also a national issue at the moment around a specific piece of accounting under infrastructure assets. CIFRA and the government are consulting on a workaround effectively for that. So I don't expect that number to change much, if at all, until 2023 now, when that is in place. In terms of the audits of both Bromsgrove and Redditch, we've begun to discuss that with Peter and Michelle at our last liaison meeting. In reality, I suspect the audit work won't begin until 2023. So if we get accounts by the end of November, Pete will need to bring those in front of the committee for yourselves to approve those and present them to audit. We also know December isn't really a full month. Once you get a couple of weeks into December, people are taking leave. So in reality, the audits aren't going to begin until 2023. What we do know and what we've seen with these authorities and all of our other audits is audits take a significant amount of time now. The work that goes into an audit now has exponentially increased to what it was probably 5 years ago for a number of factors. I can't give you a date to say, right, by the end of X, you'll have an audit opinion. What we will do once we've completed the audit and once we've got the sufficient assurance I'm comfortable and able to give that opinion, you'll get clearly the audit opinion, which will go on the website. Prior to issuing that, our audit findings report will come before this committee for comment, question and approval, and then the committee, following receipt of that report, will decide whether to subsequently recommend those accounts for adoption. So within that report, clearly we will be reporting, yes, we've received draft accounts, yes, we are happy with the numbers that are coming out of that system, yes, we're happy with all of the other evidence and corroborative information that we've been provided. So that would be quite a clear statement for 2021. Just I suppose a comment on 21-22. Clearly we mentioned the system was implemented from February 21. So 11 months of the financial year we're talking about here for the first set of draft accounts are on the old system, a single month to 2 months on the new system. The following financial year is a full year on the new system, and we've just, Michelle earlier has mentioned the number of transactions that have been created. So what we don't yet know as auditors is how easy it's going to be to unpick some of those transactions. Normally we would just ask for a full download of the ledger of every single transaction and do our procedures from there. It seems as though the number of transactions we're going to expect to receive is going to be significantly higher than in previous years. So there is going to be a complication here, I can foresee. We need to understand, first of all, how Pete, Michelle and colleagues are satisfied that the numbers have gone into the right place, and ultimately are there a number of transactions moving things around that contrary each other out, so net to nil, that we can strip out and then do our procedures. So that's quite a long-winded answer, I appreciate, but I just thought it was appropriate to mention 21-22 and potential impacts on that audit as well.
Right, thank you.
I'm just going to ask a few questions now. Sorry, you may have answered this already, Dexter. What was the date the Section 24 was issued?
That's what they are.
My other question is, are there any financial implications that we will face as a council due to the Section 24 being issued and also the fact of a latency between our accounts?
Through you, Chair. So, as Jackson's just elaborated, at the moment he's not sure how many transactions more than a normal audit can have to do, so that might result in a higher audit fee, more than likely will. Apart from that, there are no other penalties for the council apart from being named and having a Section 24 statement. That's the biggest issue.
From my understanding, that we've had Section 24 issued to Redditch Borough Council previously, and this is our second Section 24. How does that reflect on us as a council, our reputation, or access in future funding, or grants even?
Chairman, thanks through you. Obviously, the two Section 24s are for different reasons. The first one was concerns expressed by the auditors for the council not making tough financial decisions in order to balance the books. This is entirely a different reason. Obviously, this is about closure of 2021 accounts, as has been articulated. Obviously, it's not good for anybody in terms of Section 24, but I think it's been clear as to the reasons why. And as Councillor Ashley and Pete Carpenter have said, this is the sort of perfect storm almost. We agreed to change a creaking finance legacy system, replace it with an innovative, all singing, all dancing, integrated ERP system. We couldn't have foreseen at that time COVID and losing significant amounts of staff. So whilst it's not good, I think Michelle knew the situation she was walking into, also didn't know about Section 24. We will have to be able to manage that in terms of the sectoral representation. But I think the important thing for us, the council, this committee, is that we address the issues, address them quickly, taking Councillor Court's point, solve the accounts quickly, making sure, because the big challenge we've got as an authority, alongside most of the local authorities, the financial challenge of balancing the books.
My last question is balancing the books. Balancing the books. We won't know until the accounts have been fully prepared and submitted. Could we have an indication of what our situation is at the moment? Not figures, but that we're okay, or there's possibly any dangers or anything like that?
Through Chair, so we've done tranche 1 of the budget. If I look back over the last 2 or 3 years, we've had COVID. We've delivered 30 million-ish of grants to business and other people. Those have had to go through assurance processes. The vast majority of council expenditure is pretty normal. We do a payroll every month. A lot of our expenditure is payroll. The other thing is the only real big lump expenditure is capital programme. And during COVID, there's not been a lot of capital spend for obvious reasons. So I'm fairly confident that actually the positions looking back are reasonably okay. Where we need the 2021 accounts is to look at the levels of reserves, and including, are they higher than what they are then, because that's the inference, because we did less during the COVID period in terms of things, because our focus was on delivering to the business community as one thing, and the other communities which they're specifically asked for. In terms of tranche 1 budget, we had an ongoing budget deficit of around £800,000. Tranche 1 of the budget gets us, or has items totaling about 1.5 million. However, with inflation and with the pay award, which was agreed last week by the Employers Association, we've got almost another £2.5 million worth of pressures, so netting down to about £1.7 million ongoing issue. We await what the Chancellor says next Thursday in terms of what his solution is going to be for that and what the local government sector will do. This isn't a British problem. To be honest, we covered in tranche 1 of the budget what our deficit was. If you'd have gone back 7 or 8 months, our inflation and everything else would have been £200,000 or £300,000 at the most, not £2.5 million. And so if you project it up the whole sector, you're talking £5 billion problem, which the government have got to wrestle with in terms of Chancellor.
The candidate, you wanted to ask a question, and then I'm going to wrap this up.
My one question is, well, firstly, I'd like to say, I think, thank you for all the people that have come tonight and explained to us where we're going. The major thing, I think, for us as members is that we take ownership of this problem. As Redditch Borough Council, we need to take ownership of this. And so I think I will be supporting the recommendation, because we only will be responsible for the solution if we take ownership of the problem. And so I will be supporting this, and I will encourage all members to support the recommendation on page 1. Thank you. Oh, I there's maybe not there. Sorry. On the summary of proposals, right at the start, 1.1, it says the 2020-21 financial statement is a key reason. Are there any more reasons for?
Through you, Chair. So the delivery of statement accounts is a key reason, but there's subject to be reasons linking into that. So rectification of the financial system. And the issues, I think this is on page 6 of the other reasons, and that's what we monitor. Yeah.
Hang on, Thank you very much, Chair.
I just wanted to say that obviously there's various recommendations made, and having spoken to Peter, we're quite confident most of those recommendations are already in place. Going forward, we'll be able to smoother submissions of accounts, and hopefully we can prevent any hiccups coming up, prevent future Section 24 will be an issue, or we as a council, as members, can work together and make sure that we do submit our accounts on time. I do want to say thank you to Peter for sitting here today and answering all the questions. It was really important that the questions were asked by everybody and that Peter was able to answer us as well as the auditors. I've got no other questions. As Tom, you've recommended that we do the recommendations as a proposer, and I agree these recommendations are what we all need to accept. So I have a seconder as well as everybody else. So could I have a show of hands, all in favour of these recommendations? Okay. Anybody against? No abstentions? Can I ask you to call the vote? I'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the interim auditor's annual report. Jackson, thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. So, our second report today is, as you've just described, is the interim auditor's annual report. So it's interim, we're unable to issue a final version of this till we've issued an opinion on the financial statements, which we've just been discussing. So this will remain interim until we're in a position to do that, and then we'll issue the final version. This is the first time that the committee have seen an auditor's annual report in this format. Committee members may remember we reported in our audit plan back in April of this year that the National Audit Office, who set the code of audit practice that we must follow, had created a new code of practice that came into effect for the first time in this financial year. Historically, for value for money arrangements, we would have provided an audit opinion, and that work would have been quite narrow in its focus, so generally we would have reported on finance and medium-term financial plan, and that would have generally been it. From 2021, we're required to provide a commentary, so no opinion, but a commentary on 3 key areas around governance, financial sustainability, and also improving economy efficiency and effectiveness. So what that means is a much more voluminous report, which you've got in front of you today, and a number of areas that as external auditors we've not commented on for a number of years. The report itself covers the arrangements that were in place between the 1st of April 2021 and the 31st of March. 1st of April 2020, get my years correct, and the 31st of March 2021. So this is a backwards look. The previous report we've discussed probably up until the day or last weekend in terms of progress. What that means is this is a historical view and a historical record of what we found in terms of arrangements during that financial year. There are 6 key recommendations that we've made as a result of this report, in addition to the statutory recommendation which we've just discussed as a separate report. Key recommendations under the Code of Audit Practice indicate, and the wording under the code is a significant weakness in arrangements. So that's the wording that's set out and mandated under the code. We've also then included 13 improvement recommendations, which is the lowest level of recommendation that we're able to issue. Because I've clearly the size of the report, what I wasn't going to do is go through page by page. I'm probably going to focus on the key recommendations, given that significance, and then open up to questions. So the key recommendations that we've made begin on agenda page 23 of this evening's pack. The first one is around a conversation that actually we've begun in the last agenda item around the financial position of the council and the medium-term financial plan. It's very clear that there are issues and challenges for future financial sustainability, not only of this council but of local authorities around the country. Pete Carpenter's already given you an update on tranche 1 of the budget and what that looks like. Key recommendation being that if the council does continue to use reserves, then quite quickly those level of reserves are no longer sufficient to carry forward into future financial years. Pete's mentioned the work on tranche one and the inflationary pressures that all in the sector are facing, as well as the expected news on Thursday, what that may be in terms of any additional funding, etc. The second recommendation on page 24, and I'll apologise because we've also called this recommendation 1 in our report. Sorry, I'll get that amended for the final version. Apologies. So in 2021, there's two key strategies that under the SIPFord codes are required to be presented to members and approved. They're the capital strategy and the treasury management strategy. Neither of those were presented to Exec or Council within that financial year, so were not approved. So the key recommendation clearly is that those reports need to be done annually under SIPFord guidance. We see evidence that that's happened for 2022, so this was a 2021 issue, but it's still a key recommendation in that The recommendation just really looks at key projects that the Council has. We've used the financial ledger as an example here, but recommendation that clearly there needs to be a deep lessons learned review undertaken on the implementation of that project to ensure that this doesn't happen again. The Council is about to embark on significant capital funds that have been received by our government, which will take a lot of time, with significant sums of money. Clearly any lessons learned from this project, although different in nature, need to be rolled into future projects that the Council undertakes. Page 26 of the pack sets out recommendation 4. So this sets out that performance monitoring, public performance monitoring and key performance indicators need to be undertaken. So the report confirms that the last public performance management report to Executive was the 10th of July 2018. Since then we didn't see any evidence of recorded public performance reporting until the Q1 finance and performance report of this financial year, which I believe was taken not in September, it was due for September, but then taken to the next meeting after it was cancelled due to the Queen's death. So we can see that action has been taken, and we also understand that as members you would have had access to the dashboard so that you could review and understand performance. The system only holds data for a rolling 9-month period, so clearly what we can't see is access of that system during that period. And clearly what this also means is there wasn't any public discussion of performance at scheduled meetings, which we would normally expect there to be. Over the page, the fifth recommendation then is in respect of risk management and risk reporting. So members may remember previous internal audit reports dating back to 2019 and were reviewed by Zurich Municipal. We didn't see evidence of risk registers or risk management reporting coming via this committee or any of the other councils committee during the 2021 financial year. Again, we've seen progress in this matter since we started discussing risk management, so risk reporting has come through this committee twice now, I believe. There's been risk reports. There's also been reports on the definition of a corporate risk that have been agreed, I believe, through executive, not through council. So again, we've seen progress, but as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a reflection of the arrangements in place during that financial year. Finally then, the other thing that we didn't see during 2021, which we would have expected, was timely financial monitoring, so monitoring of the revenue position, monitoring of the capital position. The 2021 position up until the implementation of the ledger, so up until February we saw quarterly reporting through that financial year. Subsequent to that, the outturn for 2021 was not reported until July 22, so some 9-10 months after the year end, and we didn't see any in-year financial monitoring of the 21-22 financial position within the 21-22 financial year. And I mentioned at the beginning that this refers to arrangements in place in 2021. What the code also suggests is if we're aware of key recommendations or significant weaknesses, we should report those as soon as possible. Clearly, reporting was happening through the large part of 2021, but not in 21-22, which is why we bring this recommendation into this report as well. As I've previously mentioned, we've seen the Q1 finance report for 22-23 alongside the performance report, that joint report, and understand that the Q2 report is also forthcoming shortly. So those are the key elements really of the report that we have the most significant concerns in terms of arrangements. As I said, these are set out as key recommendations. Consider that the arrangements, overall arrangements were ineffective during that financial year. Clearly it's pleasing to see that arrangements have returned or are beginning to return. Again, from an audit point of view, what we really need to understand is see those develop and properly embed over the next few months and committee cycles to ensure that the council's arrangements are back to where they should be. The rest of the report sets out our commentary on those areas and calls out where we've made those recommendations along with those, as I said, improvement recommendations, the lower level of recommendations that we make. We're not going to talk through in detail any more of the report, so I think at that point I'll pause and invite comments or questions.
Thank you very much. Can I ask members if they wish to ask any questions?
This is probably more for the officers, but on number 3 of the key recommendations in terms of reviewing key projects, what committee will review the review you're going to undertake and the changes you're going to make?
Through you, Chair. Internally, we've put some more governance in place over the last 4 or 5 months. So we have a back office working group now, which ensures all parts of the back office are linked to any project, to make sure up front that the right questions are asked before we make decisions. We have a 4th tier working group which looks at council decisions or decisions coming into council which aren't strategic in nature. They do a forward scan to make sure from an operational side as well as a back office side that we are looking at big things coming forward. And on the Towns Fund, UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we have a governance group that goes forward to deliver that. Now in terms of what committee that goes to, those 3 things link into the quarterly performance and finance monitoring reports. And so you'll see an update of that at the next report, which comes to executive on about the 6th of December.
So just going on what it reads here, the recommendation is that you're going to do a review of the financial measure implementation and lessons learned. Where will that report go to within the council system? I'm thinking more members here probably than officer committees.
Thank you, through you, Chair. That report will come in. It is linked to this. It has to.
Brilliant, thank
And
you.
then, of course, we will get to that. I need to see the system I need to see the system steady running for a month before I can start to close things off properly and go through year end.
And thank you. Just going on to the improvement recommendations, or the more minor ones. As we see on number 6, that we need to engage stakeholders, including service users in the budget. I know many local authorities actually do budget consultations on their draft budgets. Is this something that's going to be implemented here?
Through the Chair, charge 1 of the budget, we have in Appendix 1, which is the savings proposals, a feedback form for people to give feedback. In terms of, as we go forward with the budget, we will need to do some sort of consultation in Phase 2 because the vast majority of the items in Phase 1 are operational in nature, I'd say. We've got a significant savings on the pension fund, we're saving minimum revenue provision. One of the other big items is obviously the approach we're taking to this building. And so they're not service-based in terms of that. We will have and we as officers are looking at other options to close whatever that £1.5 million gap is. But we need to understand before we go out to consultation on those items, and first to amend and then out to consultation, what the magnitude of the savings is. We need to do, and we will only start to understand that next week when the Chancellor says what it's going to be or not.
I have a bit of scepticism, just we all know that government settlements are never on time, and it wouldn't be surprising if it's sort of late December that you actually get it. But that's why a lot of authorities do sort of give an outline of some of the key things. I appreciate you can't consult on anything, and it's also how you explain things in a consultation. Minimum revenue provision, for example, isn't something that the public are going to get excited about or necessarily understand. But it's how we can try and help that. Or I'd really encourage officers and the executive to consider how we do meaningful consultation on the budget every year, and I think if you get some buy-in from people, you might also get some interesting suggestions to improve.
Chairman, through you, absolutely on board. We would want to do the consultation. The difficulty I've got, and I said it repeatedly last night, I've been in long enough care to remember that this is the most challenging, I seem to say every single year, this is the most challenging budget situation I've found ourselves in, because the cost of living, the inflationary impact on our councils, the tranche 1 figures, we covered the original gap. Inflation is of a significant magnitude. What we don't want to do, obviously, for the people of Redditch and obviously for the members, is put together a basket of savings that address that budget gap and then we don't need to. So I take the point about consultation. It's just we have to handle that very sensitively, because obviously we've got a duty to the public, we've also got a duty to you, and we've got a duty to our staff as well. But I take the premise of meaningful consultation, which will obviously be with the executive.
Thank you. Just to continue on to point 10. Benchmarking, which I'm sure the CEO knows what's coming next. Is it time for KPIs, and is it time to actually compare ourselves regularly to our SIFA near neighbours?
I think that's a big point. I've had this conversation many times. I think we've got almost a big representation here. It's not that we're against key performance measures and indicators. Where I have a problem is targets. Targets for me drive inappropriate behaviour sometimes, because you sometimes end up chasing the target as opposed to delivering good quality customer service. So we've got a suite of key performance measures that are reported now through the executive. Pete said we've had tranche 1, we've had tranche 2. We will also compare with other authorities though about benchmarking. We already do in terms of certain areas. We have good conversations. We have got a suite of performance measures. I'll just get a bit lower in terms of setting targets, but obviously that's up to the council to determine. The other point, and again, Councillor Baker pointed out, I think it's had a conversation, but benchmarking is good, but you also have to understand the context where that benchmark is in, because you could be comparing apples with pears, but we will always look to learn from others, absolutely.
SIFA, for example, I know did the near neighbour comparisons, which sort of try and get that as close as possible. So obviously no district's the same. But I do, you know my view on this very much, that KPIs are important, particularly for us as councillors to understand when things are failing and not working, and that helps for early intervention in problems, and will hopefully stave this off. So I just want to come back on that point.
Yeah, Chairman, as I say, I think we're talking from the same hymn sheet, and I think that's part of the reason why the auditors have said you need to link that performance measure so you can say whether it's going well, going badly. And we always tend to focus on negatives with performance management. It's also about celebrating our successes, sometimes I know you well know. So we've got a good way forward now. I think we've got a clear set of performance measures in the council plan. We will continue to monitor those, we will continue to look at ways we can improve things, but it's also important to celebrate success. I think we're on the same page, basically.
Absolutely, it's about having a balanced approach. But it's understanding what we do well and trying to push that, and encouraging staff as well. People who are doing a good job should be rewarded, and it's important that we recognise that. But at the same rate, it's important that we can identify trends or issues early and have interventions, change our strategy as quickly as possible. So I find that really positive, and I look forward to seeing how that will come out. The only other thing is number 11 around implementing the LGA Corporate Peer Challenge from 2 years, from 2018 and 2020. So my first question is obviously, how's that going?
Chairman, again through you. So 2018 we did, I think, fully implement. 2020, drastic COVID hit. So we will look back at most of those recommendations and incorporate those in the recovery plan. The main recommendation, and I know people looked at them in detail, the main recommendation, which I think is even more relevant now than possibly it was then, is for the council to be clear as to its priorities and non-priorities. So that will come through very clearly, as you've already seen, through the tranche 1 budget proposals. That then does steer to what those difficult decisions may well be. So we're a long way in implementing. It's just that we actually haven't formally endorsed the second, the follow-up, but mostly it was about prioritisation and focusing key resources. I think the other one was thinking about it again. The council was trying to do too much.
And obviously I'm a great believer in peer challenges, reviews, maybe even being radical, doing something like the ISO 9000 would be actually quite useful and beneficial, I think, to the council. Have we got more peer challenges in the works, or have we got any external scrutiny to help us drive up performance being planned?
Chairman, through you, no, we haven't got any corporate peer challenges planned. Officers know to it often is we also do often do corporate peer challenges in the council so we can bring back that learning. And that was really helpful for me a few months ago. We haven't got any external scrutiny at the moment. We can pick up on that. I guess my council, we could all, I think there's also an LGA corporate finance peer challenge as well. There's a specific area. My counsel to this committee and indeed the council is happy to do that, but can you let us get through the statement of accounts first and close that capacity? Because for me, it's about getting the accounts closed and then the budget prepared so we know. I'm happy to do it perhaps in June time when we've got a clear direction.
Yeah, just to make a comment on that, if you don't mind, Chair. I agree that absolutely at the moment we're sort of firefighting and we need to actually deal with fundamental issues. However, this should be resolved from what we've heard here tonight within a few months. And therefore, going forward, if we try and engage in some of this external scrutiny, hopefully we can tighten those screws and make sure that we improve our systems and that we address the fundamental issue of the Section 24 notice, which is around our governance. And I do think that things like IS 9000, but also I think SIP also is a challenge as well. I don't really mind who it is or the LGA. It's just quality challenge and external scrutiny that I think drives up performance, and that would be beneficial for us all.
Chairman, so I can make as Baker's advice, just reminded me of one recommendation in the LGP challenge, which was adopted in the SIP corporate governance model. Pete, I want to comment on that, because I think he has quite a view on it.
Yeah, I mean, we all look at it. It's probably not as implementable as people think and doesn't deliver to the level that it needs to in all cases. So as the Chief Executive said, you have to take, it gives a good framework and you should be delivering to those. And that's the baseline. But in looking at the improvement side, sometimes it might not be congruent with corporate objectives.
Sorry, there's a bit of, I'm not 100% sure. What I'm thinking you're saying is that our corporate priorities mean that you wouldn't align with that? Is that, sorry, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
No, it would align with the corporate priorities, but it looks, again, it's very much around comparing one council to another in a lot of it. And as a director of finance, I know that every council do their support services different. So are those indicators actually as accurate as they should be. So you need to do other things as well as it to actually get a rounded position to take the best view.
Thanks.
I've just got a question on recommendation 4. It says we used to report to the executive up until July 2018. Why did we stop reports being submitted?
Chairman, through you, we tend to focus through the performance dashboard so that members can have access to real-time information. We accept the auditor's point, though, actually that needs to be reported through to executives, so that's what we've done. And that's already been reported one quarter, and we've got a second quarter in train now.
My last thing is, I work for a very small charity and we have to have key performance indicators. Our budget's very small. Maybe it's easier when you're a smaller organisation because you've got less figures to play with, or maybe it's harder because you've got less staff. So having key performance indicators and so on, as Tom suggested as well, you've put it out there, it's not a bad thing, because you do pick up whether staff are doing well, whether the team is doing well, but they need to be told. But if we're doing something wrong, we also need to find out in advance before it gets to a point where we really should give notices. That's all I've got to say. Unless anybody has any further questions, Luke.
Yeah, please. I made a think about the improvement recommendation on page 38, but also the graph, which is probably more helpful on page 31. Just about our reserves and the medium-term So, you said you're waiting for the Chancellor next week, and I'm sure that'll be good. And hopefully, he comes with what we want, or maybe Tom will be right and he'll come with a Christmas present cash. However, if I'm slightly, the graph on page 31, these internal finance plans are 3 years long, which is great because it shows that we've still got money in 3 years in reserves. But if it was 4 years long, we'd be in trouble on this graph because we'd be in the negatives. So, as you become a councillor, it's very easy to want to do all of the fun stuff. Build new parks, to make stuff free. It's great. It goes down really well on the list, and you get lots of exposure. And it becomes great. Ultimately, we need to ensure there are good stewardship and financial responsibility. So I just wish to ask the officers really, given all the account firefighting that has been going on for the last 6+ months, if not more, how confident are they that actually we are looking forward with these accounts and we're going to have a robust range of options, most of which will not be overly fun and cuddly, to get a proper budget through so we're not going to run out of money in 4 years? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, and that's a really pertinent point. So the graph you see on that page is last year's medium-term financial plan, and I've already referred to the fact that there was an ongoing deficit of £800,000 a year roughly, which means our reserves went from 2.8 million general fund down to 2.2 million. In tranche 1 of the budget, we've addressed that deficit more. However, the bigger issue for us as a sector is inflation. The employers have agreed a pay award, which is brilliant for the start, but it's unfunded. So we've got to find savings to compensate that now. The utilities, depending on what happens in Ukraine, that could come down depending on the end of that conflict. But at the moment, there's councils renewing their utility bills 400% higher than existing. I'm assuming just 200% at the moment, because I'm hoping that by the time we come to renew our contract, the conflict will hopefully be at a different point. But it's significant money in terms of that. In terms of security of our numbers, I said earlier, the massive thing we've done as a sector over the last 2 years is give out money to business and individuals. There are massive assurance processes around that that we've had to deliver to the government, and so we passed those assurances on those counts, which leaves the general council expenditure, as I've explained earlier. In reality, we've not done as much over the last couple of years as we would normally do, so income has been down as well. We've had government grant, which we've applied for in year 1 of COVID, like every other council, of that scale fees and charges, which will be going into a reserve. We'll take a view in the 2021 accounts if that is rolled over from a COVID reserve into the general fund. On top of all that, we've got 7 million that's sitting in our earmarked reserves. Now, from my observation, looking at the last 3 years, none of those have moved, so I would question if we need all that money, and if that can be used in different ways. That will be part of the closure of accounts as well, in my narrative statement of the statement of accounts.
So just to follow up on that, when you talk about positively, we all hope the conflict in Ukraine ends in a very positive way. But if that doesn't, and if other things get worse, and if the Treasury cavalry don't come over the hill, are we in a position where we're going to continue to be solvent, or are we in a position where, like maybe most councils, we won't be, and we just have to wait for the government to come and bail out the entire sector? Thanks.
Through you, Chair. I think it's the most pertinent question for the sector. I can't issue an unbalanced budget over the 3-year MTFS period. And so I will need to find, with CMT and with the executive, a series of savings in tranche 2 but balance the budget. Those could well be really significant cuts to service areas, which will be the same as most other councils. And that is the reality of the situation if the statement next week isn't favourable in any way.
If I just comment on that, I mean, I'm actually very happy you said that, because as far as I'm concerned, that's, again, being relatively obvious that that's been coming down the path. And I would just urge all council members to realise actually how stark that is and how difficult the situation we may be in. And while it's very easy to be in favour of not doing things or doing things that are great or positive, we've got to take this really seriously and, explore all options. And, I hope everyone comes up with proposals if they've got any and they think they've got any good ideas. But yeah, just to understand how tricky this will be and thus how difficult it may be for us. Well, thank you.
Does anybody have any further questions?
Just a comment really following on from Councillor Paul's is I think that graph and this potential future catastrophe which might come across us through fuel bills, cost of living, etc., I think it really shows how as a council we have to make sure we're spending money responsibly on projects which the public value and support, and we also have to make sure that we are protecting those who are the most vulnerable, because at the end of the day, if we've got to make difficult decisions, it shouldn't be the people who are already struggling who are bearing the brunt of that. So I think it really brings home to this council how responsible we have to be to the people who need us the most.
Yeah, I just completely agree with that, Sharon. I just think that we need to find a way as a council to, further, commercial council, think of other revenue sources and think of a way where we can actually, make the books balance more on a council level, so that as we get more challenges, we don't have to take difficult decisions that disadvantage to make. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? I'd like to move the recommendation as stated in the report, so do I have a second?
Perhaps a second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I have a show of hands all in favour of this report? Any against? Any abstentions? Carried. Thank you. Finally, we're going to the community work programme, and please, if we can have
Yes, my comment is the date will be, because obviously the papers have to be out a week before the committee, so it will be sometime in the second week of December. I need to coordinate, so I've got Redditch and Borough Council on consecutive days, for obvious reasons. And there is an executive or cabinet in Borough Council, so I will coordinate dates over the next week and a half with people, so that you've got more notice than you had for this meeting.
Thank you. Does anyone have any further questions or anything in regards to the work programme? Brad?
Just a comment, Chair, that April 2023, I'm just questioning whether or not we'll be able to get through all of it, and maybe it would be better if we start trying to stop doing the traditional number of audit meetings and we actually look at going bi-monthly or something, because some of this just seems a bit difficult to do in a single meeting properly.
Through you, Chair, I think that's actually a very good comment, but we probably need to look at the frequency, because we need to properly monitor the improvement plan to make sure we deliver, and so maybe bi-monthly for a year will be relevant.
Very wise. There's no other questions or comments to add, but I'm going to bring this meeting to a close. I really appreciate everybody coming and attending this meeting. Thank you for attending today.
Can we thank Andy as well, actually, for internal audit?
Yeah, she needed them more than I did.
Here, though. I remember what was the mayor that got in.